Okay, Math 095. This is part 2 of your Exam 2 review. I left off on number 10, and when I watched the video, I saw that part of the right-hand side was being cut off. So I'm taking it from that point so you can see the right-hand side. So I'm just solving for y. I'm subtracting 3 from both sides. And when I do that, I get y is greater than 1, or y is less than negative 7. For this particular problem, number 10, they want you to write the solution in interval notation. So remember, we go from left to right, small to big, right? Left to right, small to big. So y is less than negative 7. Since it's less than, I'm going to use a parentheses, and remember we always start from negative infinity, and infinity always uses the parentheses as well. So I've got parentheses, negative infinity, comma, negative 7, parentheses. I've got my big U, which joins these two together. Then I've got greater y is greater than 1. So it's not greater than or equal to, it's just simply greater than. So I'm going to use a parenthesis, 1, comma, infinity. And again, it's infinity, it's going to be a parenthesis. So that's my interval notation for number 10. So I've got the answer here and the interval notation with it. I'm going to be going to page 4. I'm starting with number 11. Solve and graph on a number line and then write your answer in interval notation. So for this one, I want both the graph and the interval notation. So my problem is negative 5x plus 3 is greater than or equal to 12, or negative 5x plus 3 is less than or equal to negative 12. So I'm going to break the problem up into 2 pieces. Here's the first piece. I'm just bringing this down. Here's the second piece. I'm just bringing that down. Now I'm going to solve both of them. I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. I'm going to start on the left-hand side. After I subtract 3, I get negative 5x is greater than or equal to 9. So I want to divide both sides by negative 5. So since I'm dividing both sides by negative 5, that means I need to change my inequality sign, because whenever I divide by a negative number, the inequality sign flips. So it was greater than or equal to, now it's less than. It becomes less than or equal to. So here is my first part of my answer. X is less than or equal to negative 9 over 5. Now for the right-hand side, I'm doing the same thing. I'm just solving. I'm subtracting 3 from both sides, which gives me negative 5x is less than or equal to negative 15. I want to get x alone, so I need to divide both sides by negative 5. When I divide by a negative 5, or any negative number, I need to change my inequality sign just like I did over here. So it was a less than or equal to. Now, since I have divided by negative 5, it becomes a greater than or equal to. So the second part of my answer is x is greater than or equal to 3. So this is the first part of my answer. I'm going to take this and put this on a number line. Okay, so first part I want to graph is x is less than or equal to negative 9 over 5. So here's 0, here's negative 1. It's almost to negative 2. Negative 9 over 5 is almost to negative 2. I've got an equal to, it's going to be a bracket. So it's a bracket, and I'm going all the way to negative infinity. I also want to show on the same number line, x is greater than or equal to 3. So since it has the equal to, going to be another bracket on 3. And I'm going to take that all the way to positive infinity. So that's the number line. Putting both the left-hand side and the right-hand side on the same number line. And now I want to write my answer in interval notation. So I'm just going to take the graph and put it in interval notation. So I'm going from small to big. So I'm starting with negative infinity, which has a parentheses, comma. I'm going to negative 9/5. It's a bracket because it's an equal to. And then I need my union, my big U, and then bracket 3, comma, and then I'm going to all the way to infinity. And in any type of infinity uses parentheses. So that is my answer or solution in interval notation. For number 12, I want to solve the absolute value of 4x minus 11 minus 10 equals negative 18. So I want to solve that. So I'm going to add 10 to both sides because I want to get the absolute value alone on the left-hand side and the number on the right-hand side, or I want to get that in standard form, which they do in Hawks. So since my absolute value is equal to negative 8, think about, can an absolute value ever be equal to anything negative? And we learned that in class before spring break, and that cannot happen. So I can't do this problem. So the answer is no solution. And I'm done. Just make sure you write down no solution, because that is your final answer. So for number 13, I have a word problem. I have $12,500 invested at a local bank. Part of the money is invested at 12%, and the other part is invested at 8%. So I'm going to let X equal the amount of money invested at 12%, and I'm going to let Y be equal to the money invested at 8%. So it's helpful to decide what are you going to let X represent in the problem and what are you going to let Y represent in the problem. So now I'm going to write my two equations. I'm going to translate the second sentence into math. It says part of the money is invested at 12% and the rest is invested at 8%. So the money invested at 12% is X, plus the money invested at 8%, which is Y, equals the total invested, which is $12,500. So that is my first equation. X plus Y is equal to $12,500. Now I know the interest she received is $1,340. Here's the interest. And I know that I have 12% interest and 8% interest. So I'm going to take my 12%, change that to a decimal, and make that 0.12. So 0.12 times X, plus, I'm going to make 8% a decimal. Just move the decimal place over 2 spots to get 0.08. And I'm going to take that times Y. And so I get 0.12X plus 0.08Y equals my total interest of $1,340. So there are my two equations, or my systems. So you can use the addition method if you want. I'm going to use substitution. And again, use whatever you're most comfortable with. I wouldn't really use graphing. That would be too difficult. I would either use substitution or addition. So I'm going to take my first equation, X plus Y equals 12,500. And I'm going to solve for X. I want X on one side and everything on the other. So I'm going to subtract Y from both sides. This is going to cancel, and I'm going to get X equals 12,500 minus Y. So this is what I'm going to substitute back in. So I'm ready to solve the systems. I'm going to take out X, which is sitting next to the 0.12, and I'm going to put in 12,500 minus y. I'm going to sub that in to the second equation. So I am going to distribute. I'm going to take the 0.12 and I'm going to multiply that by everything inside the parentheses. And 0.12 times 12,500 is 1,500. And 0.12 times minus y, or minus 1y, is minus 0.12y. I'm going to add that to the 0.08y, and that equals 1,340. I'm just following the second equation. So I'm going to combine like terms. I'm going to put the negative 0.12y together with the positive 0.08y. And I'm going to bring the 15 down. So I've got, or 1,500. I've got 1,500 minus 0.04y equals 1,340. I need to get the negative 0.04y alone. So I'm going to subtract 1,500 from both sides. And I get negative 0.04y equals negative 160. I want the y alone, so I'm going to divide both sides by negative 0.04. So take and divide, or punch in your calculator, negative 160 divided by negative 0.04, and you will get an answer of 4,000. So 4,000 is the amount that's invested at the 8%. Now remember, with systems, you need to have an X answer and a Y answer. So if Y is 4,000, and I know she invested a total of 12,500, my X is going to be equal to 12,500 minus the 4,000, and what's left over is 8,500, and that was what was invested at 12%. So X is 8,500 and Y is 4,000. Remember, you need the X part of the answer and the Y part of the answer for a complete answer. Okay, so I'm on the last page, page 5. I'm going to be graphing and shading, and this part I did not teach. It was on the videos that I sent you. I believe Professor Kate Sims-Drew taught this part of the lesson. So I'm just going to review it in case you didn't understand it from the video. I want to graph this linear inequality here, and then I'm going to shade the solution. And in my directions it says I need to graph at least 2 points. So if you want to put this y equals 2x minus 3 in your calculator, and just pick any 2 points. And I picked 0, -3, always make it easy. 0 is always easy to use, so like I said, I use 0, -3, and 2, 1. Make your x's small, like use 1 or 0 or -1, 2. So those are my 2 points I'm using, 0, -3, and 2, 1. So I'm going to graph these, and since there is a greater than or equal to in the problem, when I graph it, my line is going to be solid. So here is 0, -3, and here is 2, 1. And since it's greater than or equal to, connect these 2 points with a solid line. And then also, since it's greater than or equal to, I'm going to shade above the line. So I'm shading above the line. And if you want to, you can put a letter here on the shaded region. They do that in Hawks. They ask you to pick which letter represents the shaded solution. So I'm going to put a big A on my shaded solution, so I know that that answer is all this area in here. And that is it for 14. I've got one more to go. Now we're going to graph and shade 2 linear inequalities. So this is number 15. This is the last one on the not chapter, but exam 2 review. I'm going to graph 2 linear inequalities and shade the solution. So now I'm doing 2. So my first one is y is greater than 3x minus 2. My second linear inequality is y is less than or equal to negative 2x plus 3. So I want to do the same thing I did for 14 and make a table for each linear inequality. And again, I want 2 points for each. So if you want to pop those in your calculator under your y equals, you bring up the first table. Here are my 2 points. I'm going to use 0, -2, and 2, 4. And for the second one, for y is less than or equal to negative 2x plus 3, if you want to put that in your calculator and bring up 2 points, I'm going to use 0, 3, and 2, -1. Again, I always choose 0, 1, or 2 for my x. Okay, so I'm going to look at table 1. This might be confusing. So table 1, I have 0, -2, graph that, and 2, 4. Okay? And I'm going to connect them with a dotted line because it's just, remember, greater than, less than, dotted. If it has an equal to on the bottom, it's a solid line. So I'm going to connect those two, as you can see here, with a dotted line. And then since it's a greater, I'm shading in red. So if you see all the shading in red, that's above the dotted line. And now for the second line, I have 0, 3, which is right here, and 2, negative 1. And this is a solid line because it's less than or equal to. So in blue, this is my solid. I'm going to connect the 0, 3 and the 2, negative 1 with a solid line. And it's less than or equal to. So I'm shading below the line. So everywhere that's shaded in blue is my answer for the second linear inequality. So we want to look and see, well, where does the blue overlap the red? And sun, it's right in this area, and I'm labeling it with a C, with a big C. So it's in between the blue and the dotted, the solid blue line and the dotted black and red line. So where the blue and the red intersect in the shading is where the answer is. So I put a big C around that, or on top of that. And Hawks will ask you to do that as well. So you need to show your two lines, one dotted, one solid, both shadings, and then where they overlap, and then put a big fat letter over the place where they overlap. Okay. So just to repeat, the shaded area is covered with a big C. That is your answer, where the red and the blue overlap. So it's more a picture. The answer is a picture of some shading. And like I said in Hawks, they will put letters over different shaded regions, and you pick the correct letter that represents the solution. So that is the end of the exam 2 review problems, the answers. If anyone has any questions, I will be sending that test out next week. Send me an email if you're lost or stuck, if you have any questions at all. Okay, I'll be talking to you soon. Have a good weekend.